Hello, my friends, and welcome to the wilderness. Today, still in the season of Epiphany, we hear the story of the wedding feast of Cana, a story found only in the Gospel of John. A reading from John, chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern of that is to you and me? Is it that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." And they now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, the word gospel means good news. And over the millennia, it has also become synonymous with the word for truth. Here, in the wilderness, we endeavor to explore and find the spiritual truths in the good news, and not look to whether the events described were accurately presented by the good news writers. Today is a case in point, and the Gospel of John itself is a case in point. The wedding story of Cana only appears in John's Gospel, as does the raising from the dead of Lazarus. 2 very powerful signs. And John would put it that one would think, if John put it in, why didn't the other gospel writers write about these signs of power? But John wrote that this was Jesus' first sign of power, his first revelation of his glory. In it, we have a very human, Jesus seems to be the most human in John's gospel, seemingly reluctant Jesus at a community event. Wedding feasts were multi-day affairs, which Jesus was attending from some miles away from his home. And he says that his hour had not yet come. He had not even started his ministry. What were the concerns of the wedding host to him and his mother? They were just guests. The feast was not about them. They weren't the ones getting married. Jesus' mother doesn't cajole him, but she puts him in a box by telling the servants to follow his instructions. Now, that's something that my experience has shown mothers do. And then, what does Jesus do in this story? How does he respond? Jesus tells the servants to fill the jars used for holy bathing. Not the drinking vessels, the ones that fill the jars that are used by members of the household when they want to go through the rites of ritual purity. Fill those with water. These stone jars, 20 to 30 gallons each. And that would have been no small task. There was no hose or running water then. And the jars were stone. They couldn't have been dragged to where the water source was. The water would have had to have been carried. So why then was Jesus doing this? There was no blessing of this water, no calling upon God to show God's glory, as happened with the raising of Lazarus from the dead. Just a simple fill these jars with water. And after they were filled, take the water to the steward. As far as we can tell, Jesus didn't even get up from the table. And somehow, the water became wine. And so, the gospel tells us, his disciples believed in him. Jesus had only been leading in his particular gospel. Jesus had only been leading the disciples for a few days. John the Baptist, less than a week before, had proclaimed to his followers who Jesus was. And some of them then had begun to follow Jesus. And Jesus showed him this so that they might believe in him, according to John. Jesus, though, was and is not about some magic trick, magically transforming some liquid from one to another. These miracles are not the good news. Water transformed into wine is a mechanism for faith and belief to grow. This story is a mechanism for faith and belief to grow. Jesus, doing what he did, facilitated the continuance of the feast. The community continued to celebrate the joining of peoples. The best was saved for last, and the bridegroom got the credit. Now, we look at these scriptures with faith. Sometimes blind faith. That God would need to do something extraordinary for us to believe in God. When we look around, we forget so often of the miracle of water itself, of how a liquid can be transformed into grapes, and then from grapes into something like wine. Wine for us to enjoy. That the miracle of love allows people to come together in celebration and in the joining of families. These are the miracles. The miracle of community. The truth, the spiritual truth, is that we all have mothers. That's the truth. Who sometimes ask us to stretch ourselves for the good of others, even when we don't want to, as in today's story. Even when it's not the right time, it sort of is the right time to help. Jesus continued through his life and teachings to point out the power of love, the power of God in the world. And the way to God is through love. And love sometimes asks us just to do the simple things. Sometimes to ask others just to do the simple things. And out of those simple things, community is enhanced. Better wine comes forth. Our better nature is found by just doing the simple things. How easy to believe in a supernatural being who could perform miracles than in someone who is just like us. How difficult it is to see God at work in our lives in the mundane. The filling of stone jars with water by hand the transformation of jars for purification into vessels holding the wine of celebration. And remember who is telling us this story. The gospel writer of John. And the good news, he doesn't hide it. The good news in John's opening to his gospel, his spiritual truth, is that God's divine purpose, which existed from the beginning, was made manifest. God so loved us that God has a human aspect. God so loves us that life, all that is, can be understood, known, and experienced through the acting upon of that divine purpose and through that divine purpose's direction. We are the servants filling the jars with water. We are the ones drawing the water, knowing from whence it came, and marveling at how through the interaction with the divine, the ordinary becomes the best vintage. If we believe that this is solely the action of the person of Jesus, we fail to see our part in it. If this is some miracle outside of our possible understanding, other than through faith, if we need these acts of power to believe, then when those times come, and they come for us all, when we cannot or do not see Jesus or God in our lives, then we are lost. Then we lose the way Jesus came to show us. Just fill the water jars and be amazed at what transpires. Just celebrate the mystery of life and love and notice the real miracles. It is the hardest thing to do, walking this path of faith, this path of love and reconciliation. Let us, though, listen to Jesus' mother today and just do whatever he tells us to do. For God's sake. Amen. Thanks again for being here today. Don't forget to tell your friends and acquaintances about this channel. Click and subscribe. Click if you like it, and subscribe, clicking the button below, and comment on this video if you wish. I remain your priest in the wild. Until next time.